Ever feel like, the news is just a shouting match these days?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, today's deep dive is about a lawsuit that's making, well, a lot of noise.
Oh, really?
We're going to break it down for you.
That sounds interesting.
So it involves Karoline Leavitt.
Mm-hmm.
She's a well-known conservative figure, and she's suing this popular liberal TV show
Oh, wow.
for defamation.
Defamation, huh?
We're not naming names just yet,
Okay.
but trust me, you know this show.
I bet I do.
This lawsuit isn't just about politics, though.
Okay.
It's about the power of media and what happens when someone feels they've been unfairly portrayed.
What's fascinating here is that this case really digs into this whole idea of media responsibility,
Yeah.
especially in our current world,
Right.
where information and misinformation spreads so quickly.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
What exactly is Leavitt claiming here?
So Leavitt is alleging that this show aired segments that basically painted this false picture of her character and her professional integrity,
Okay.
ultimately causing damage to her reputation.
So for our listeners out there,
Uh-huh.
could you break down what someone actually has to prove in a defamation case?
Sure. So Leavitt needs to demonstrate a few key things to win this case.
Okay.
Firstly, she has to actually show that the statements made about her on the show were actually false.
Okay.
Secondly, she has to prove that those false statements were made with malicious intent.
Malicious intent.
Meaning the show knew they were wrong or acted recklessly about the truth.
Okay.
And then finally, she needs to demonstrate that these statements directly led to harm
Okay.
to her reputation. Not just like hurt feelings,
Right.
but real damage.
So it's not just about feeling offended, it's
No.
about proving real harm.
Right.
Okay.
Think of it like this. If the show can prove their statements were true,
Mm-hmm.
or that they had no reason to believe they were false, then Leavitt's case becomes much harder to win.
Right.
It also matters if they were stating facts or just expressing opinions, as opinions are generally protected under free speech.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, what could be considered malicious intent in this context? What kind of evidence would Leavitt need to present?
Well, imagine if Leavitt could demonstrate that the show intentionally ignored evidence
Okay.
that contradicted their claims about her.
Right.
Or if she could prove they twisted facts to fit a particular narrative that could be seen as acting with malice.
So it's not just about making a mistake.
Right.
It's about a deliberate attempt to mislead or to harm.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a difficult thing to prove.
Sure.
But if Leavitt can successfully show malice,
Yeah.
it significantly strengthens her case.
This is starting to feel like a legal thriller.
Oh, yeah.
But beyond just the legal technicalities,
Right.
what makes this case so interesting from a broader perspective?
This lawsuit's like a tiny window into some much larger issues we're grappling with as a society.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about media ethics in the age of instant information.
Wow.
How much responsibility do media outlets have to ensure the accuracy of what they broadcast?
Right.
Especially when things can go viral in like seconds.
Yeah.
And how does this case reflect the increasing political polarization we see everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Is media being used as a weapon to attack opponents
Right.
rather than a platform for healthy debate?
It does feel like everyone is watching this case,
Yeah.
waiting to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to spark a wave of similar lawsuits, or will it scare people off? What's your take?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
A win for Leavitt might embolden others to take action against these media giants,
Right.
feeling like they have a chance to challenge what they perceive as unfair treatment.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if the show wins, it could discourage people from pursuing legal action due to the potential costs and complexities involved.
Yeah.
It could make people think twice
Sure.
before taking on a media powerhouse.
And we can't forget about public opinion.
No.
It feels like this case has already struck a nerve,
Yeah.
especially online.
Absolutely. Social media is buzzing with hashtags like, hashtag justice for Karoline and hashtag media bias, reflecting how this case resonates with people's anxieties about media bias.
Right.
Some see this as a David and Goliath battle,
Okay.
with Leavitt representing like the everyday person
Uh-huh.
standing up to a powerful media entity.
So how could this case actually influence future lawsuits against media organizations?
Well, it could set an important legal precedent
Okay.
if Leavitt wins.
Yeah.
It could lead to a wave of similar lawsuits, making media outlets think twice before publishing potentially defamatory content. But if the show prevails, it could make it more challenging for individuals to successfully sue media outlets.
Right.
Even in cases of blatant falsehoods. It really has the potential to shift the legal landscape.
This is already so much to think about.
I know, right?
And we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
What stood out to you, listener, as we unpack these initial points?
Yeah.
Is it the potential impact on media, the intricacies of defamation law, or how this reflects the current state of our political climate? Hold on to those thoughts as we dive even deeper into this fascinating case.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
How a single lawsuit can act as this mirror, reflecting these larger societal anxieties about truth, fairness, and you know who has the power to shape the narrative.
You're right. It's making me think about how much our own personal opinions might already be shaped by the media we consume. What do you think, listener? Have you ever felt like you were only getting one side of the story from certain news outlets?
It's easy to fall into those echo chambers.
Right.
Where you're surrounded by voices that just agree with you.
Yeah.
But, true understanding often comes from hearing perspectives that you might not initially agree with.
Okay, so we've talked about what could happen if Leavitt wins.
Right.
But what if the tables are turned and the TV show wins the case?
Okay.
What could that mean for the future of media and how public figures are portrayed?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
A victory for the show could potentially embolden media outlets to be, more assertive in their coverage of public figures.
Okay.
Even if that coverage is critical or controversial.
Right.
It could raise the bar for what's considered defamatory, making it harder for individuals to successfully sue for damage to their reputation.
So it could create a situation where media outlets feel less constrained in their reporting.
Potentially, yeah.
Even if it means pushing the boundaries of what's considered fair or accurate.
And that raises some important questions about this balance between freedom of speech and the protection of individual reputation. Where do we draw the line? How do we ensure that media outlets are held accountable for false or misleading information without stifling legitimate reporting and critical commentary?
I can already hear some listeners saying, well, if you're a public figure, you should just expect scrutiny and criticism.
Yeah.
But where does that line get crossed from fair criticism to potentially defamatory statements?
That's the heart of the debate, isn't it? It's one thing to criticize someone's policies or actions, but it's another to make false statements about their character or engage in personal attacks that are intended to actually harm their reputation.
Some might argue that this lawsuit is an attempt to silence dissenting voices, that Leavitt is trying to use the legal system to suppress criticism that she just doesn't like.
Sure.
What's your perspective on that argument?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
We have to be cautious about any attempts to stifle free speech.
Right.
Especially when it comes to criticizing those in power.
Sure.
A healthy democracy really depends on this robust exchange of ideas, even if those ideas are unpopular or controversial.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't mean that anyone can just say anything they want with impunity.
Okay.
There are limits. And defamation law exists to protect individuals from false statements that cause real harm.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
We want to protect free speech, but we also want to protect individuals from being unfairly smeared or having their reputations destroyed by false information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this case really puts that tension front and center.
Right.
It forces us to think about where we draw the line.
Yeah.
How we determine what's fair comment and what crosses the line into defamation.
It also makes me think about the potential chilling effect on journalism.
Right.
If media outlets are constantly worried about being sued for defamation, will they shy away from these tough stories?
Yeah.
Especially those involving powerful people or institutions.
That's a valid concern.
Okay.
The threat of lawsuits could create this climate of self-censorship where journalists are hesitant to report on controversial topics or criticize those who have the resources to pursue legal action. That could have a detrimental impact on investigative journalism.
Yeah.
And our ability to hold those in power accountable.
It feels like we're in a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah.
We want to hold media outlets accountable for spreading falsehoods, but we also don't want to create an environment where they're afraid to report on important stories.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
And this case, while focusing on one specific lawsuit,
Yeah.
really brings these larger questions to the forefront.
Uh-huh.
It forces us to confront the challenges of navigating a media landscape that's increasingly fragmented, polarized, and distrustful.
You mentioned distrust.
Yeah.
Do you think this case reflects a broader trend of declining trust in traditional media institutions?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're living in an era where trust in institutions, including the media, is eroding.
Right.
There's a perception, fueled in part by the rise of social media and the proliferation of misinformation,
Right.
that mainstream media outlets are biased,
Yeah.
that they're pushing particular agendas rather than reporting objectively.
It's like everyone is picking their favorite news source based on whether it confirms their existing beliefs rather than challenging them.
That's a dangerous trend.
Yeah.
It leads to echo chambers and filter bubbles,
Right.
where people are only exposed to information that reinforces their existing worldview.
Uh-huh.
It makes it incredibly difficult to have productive conversations across ideological divides, because we're not even operating from a shared set of facts.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
If we're losing trust in our media institutions and drowning in this sea of misinformation, how do we rebuild that trust and create a more informed public?
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It requires a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
We need to promote media literacy,
Okay.
teaching people how to critically evaluate information, recognize bias, and distinguish fact from opinion.
So instead of blindly accepting what we read or hear, we need to develop our own BS detectors.
Exactly.
Ask ourselves, what's the source? What's their agenda? Are they presenting a balanced view?
And we need to be willing to engage with diverse perspectives,
Right.
even those we might disagree with.
Yeah.
If everyone in your social media feed agrees with you all the time, it's probably time to diversify your sources and expose yourself to different viewpoints.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a lot of work. Do we all have to become investigative journalists just to stay informed these days?
It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
I know.
Right.
But even small steps can make a difference. Start by being more mindful of the information you consume and share.
Okay.
Pay attention to the sources you trust.
Yeah.
And be wary of headlines that seem too sensational or emotionally charged. Fact-check information before you share it, and be willing to have respectful conversations with people who hold different views.
It sounds like we're being encouraged to be more, active participants in shaping the information landscape.
Precisely. We can't just sit back and complain about media bias or misinformation.
Right.
We have a responsibility to be informed, engaged citizens. And that means taking an active role in evaluating the information we encounter and demanding better from our media ecosystem.
This whole conversation brings us back to the Karoline Leavitt case in an interesting way. It's not just about her.
Right.
It's not just about one TV show. It's not even just about the legal outcome. This case is like a lightning rod, highlighting these bigger issues we've been discussing.
Yeah.
About media power, freedom of speech, and the responsibility that comes with both.
You're absolutely right. It's a microcosm of the challenges we face in navigating this complex information landscape.
Right.
And it reminds us that these issues have real-world consequences. What's at stake here isn't just like a legal victory or defeat.
Right.
It's about the future of our media, our politics, and our ability to engage in, meaningful dialogue as a society.
Okay, so let's bring it all back to you, our listener. What has stood out to you in this deep dive?
Yeah.
Did anything surprise you? Has this case made you think differently about the media you consume, the information you share, or the role you play in shaping the public discourse?
What resonates most with me is this realization that we're all part of this conversation, whether we realize it or not. Every time we click on an article, share a post, or engage in a debate, we're contributing to the shape of our media landscape.
Right.
And the choices we make, individually and collectively, have real-world consequences.
That's a powerful thought. It's not about pointing fingers or blaming the media.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we all have a responsibility to be informed, critical consumers of information and to engage in these conversations in a thoughtful, constructive way.
I completely agree. This case, with all its complexities and nuances, is a reminder that we can't afford to be passive bystanders.
Yeah.
We have to be active participants
Right.
in shaping a media landscape that is fair, accurate, and accountable.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
We've gone from a seemingly straightforward defamation lawsuit to this much broader conversation about media ethics, freedom of speech, and the challenges of navigating the digital age.
Yeah.
It's amazing how one case can unlock so many layers of complexity and raise such important questions.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
And I hope our listener feels equipped to continue exploring these issues long after this deep dive is over.
We've provided you with the information, the context, and the different perspectives. Now it's up to you to decide what it all means for you. What resonated with you most? What questions are you left with? What actions are you inspired to take?
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Take what you've learned, discuss it with your friends and family, and continue to be curious, engaged, and willing to challenge your own assumptions.
It all starts with us.
That's how we create a more informed and equitable future together.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.